Risks of a specific kind of bird flu, which appears to be spreading through different states and species, is behind a warning from the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. One person was infected with H5N1 after coming in contact with cattle in Texas. Now, the virus has been found in herds of cattle in 6 different states, 2 of which share a border with Canada. For more this morning, we are joined by Scott Weiss, an infectious diseases veterinarian with the Ontario Veterinary College. Welcome to your morning.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
So for outbreaks like this, Scott, where we see it occurring in different species, from where it originated, how does this virus spread?
Well, that's what we're trying to sort out. So the ultimate source of this virus is birds. This is a bird pandemic that's been going on for a while. It's really widespread with millions of birds that are affected. And occasionally we see spillover into animals, other animals, and we've seen it spill into cattle. How it's spreading between cattle is still a bit of a question.
All right, well, you mentioned birds. According to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, more than 11 million birds have been infected by H5N1 in Canada, with 14 sites. That's a location where farm animals are kept, currently infected, so 14. How concerned do we need to be then about food like beef or poultry, eggs or dairy?
Well, the good thing is this virus isn't very tough. It dies pretty quickly when it gets outside of the host, and cooking kills it, normal food handling kills it, pasteurization kills it, it milks. So we're not really worried about food. We're worried about people that are in contact with animals. That's the current concern right now. Raw milk, maybe there's some concerns there. There are a lot of reasons not to drink raw milk from an infectious disease standpoint, and this is maybe one more. But your average consumer, this isn't something to worry about.
So H5N1 has been detected in every continent except for Australia. Since 2022, more than 65 million birds and poultry have been culled as a result of exposure to the virus. That's just in the U.S. So then, Scott, how concerning is this particular strain of bird influenza?
Well, it's a concern because it's been spreading so widely and so long. It spills over into mammals, and that's what we're really concerned about, spill over into us and other domestic animals. This strain itself isn't necessarily the problem. We're worried about what this strain could become, and this is why we track influenzas. The few human infections that we've had with this strain tend to be fairly mild, and the number of them is very, very small with respect to the millions upon millions of birds. But what we don't want to do is have multiple flu strains circulating so they can get together and create a new flu strain that would be able to infect us more readily and cause disease. So we don't have that right now. We're a long way from that with this virus right now, but we just don't like to see more flu circulating because it creates the potential for things to happen.
Why then would the U.S. Food Inspection Agency or the U.S. Center for Disease and Prevention issue a warning? Is it because of the concern of it developing into a more serious type of flu?
Well, ultimately, we're worried about this moving into people and spreading person to person. That's not what it's doing right now. But what we don't want to have is this flu in circulation combining with other animal flus that are in circulation and human flus that are in circulation, because those flu viruses can get together and maybe create a new one. And the worst case scenario for us would be one that's different from our flu, so our immune system doesn't remember it because of vaccination or previous disease, but it's able to spread person to person and cause severe disease. And we're a long way of that from this strain, but if this strain combines with other strains, that could happen. And that's why we pay attention to this. So because it's moving into mammals, because it's widespread in birds, we want to limit the transmission of this strain as much as we can in animals so that we don't create the potential for something worse to happen.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about just before we close. There are more than 3,000 cases of bird influenza detected. That's in the wild, according to the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative. And this, of course, is a huge concern for our livestock farmers. It is risky and expensive to both protect and then cull if necessary. So what are our farms doing right now to stave off potential risk?
Well, it's a challenge because if it's in wild birds, it's hard to contain things. So with poultry, they have very strict biosecurity. They keep animals inside typically. They try to keep birds out. They really have that separation between the outside and the inside. It's more challenging with other species, and that includes our pet species as well, dogs and cats that get outside and can encounter birds. So we're trying to create as much separation as we can between wildlife and domestic animals and people, and some of that's just common sense, stay away from birds, but it's really hard to keep animals at pasture away from birds. So there's only so much that we can do, and that's why we focus efforts on seeing what's out there, trying to prevent that bird-animal interface, but also really trying to figure out what we do when it hits an animal so we don't get transmission in our domestic animals.
Hey, Scott Weiss, thanks for joining us today. Great to meet you. And also a fun fact for our viewers, Scott happens to be related to Teddy Wilson, who's in for Lindsey today. Great to have you on the show.
Great, thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.